Hello and welcome back to another episode of Cozypreneur. Today we're joined by special guest Maggie Patterson. Maggie Patterson is the creator of BS Free Business and the author of Staying Solo. With 20 years of experience as a successful entrepreneur in client services, Maggie helps service business owners build what she proudly calls a boring business, strategically small, sustainable, and designed to fit their lives without the constant hustle. A podcaster and writer, Maggie is a vocal advocate for humane business practices rooted in respect, empathy, and trust. She hosts two podcasts, Staying Solo and Confessions of a Micro Agency Owner, and co-hosts the consumer advocacy podcast, Duped, the dark side of online business. Welcome, Maggie. Thanks for coming on. Welcome back to another episode of the Cozypreneur podcast. If this is your first time listening, Cozypreneur is all about helping you make money and work with the dreamiest of clients. So grab your beverage, get your cozy socks on, and let's dive in. So at the time of recording, your book just came out. So how do you feel?
I'm not going to lie, this week has been a whirlwind. I've been fighting with Amazon over publishing because I don't want to deal with them, but they won't print my book and distribute in Canada unless I deal with them. So, it's exciting to see such a big project come together, but also I feel like I've been not even jogging, like running at full speed. And I'm like, okay, I need to relax. I went and ordered myself a cake to celebrate this weekend.
I love that. And I want to talk all about what your book is about, but I'm so curious, what was the book writing process like? Because that's on my bucket list.
Yeah, it was on my bucket list too. So I actually started writing the book in November of 2023, and I had my first draft by the end of kind of June. And then from there, there's development, editing, proofreading, interior design. Like that process took over 6 months. So I feel like when people think of a book, they think of, I'm just going to write the book. And it's like, there's been just as much work around the marketing of the book, the design of the book, all the guest interviews, all the citations. It was a lot of work beyond the actual writing. The writing was probably the easiest part of the process because I am a writer.
That makes a lot of sense. So give me the overview. What is the book about? Give us the title.
Yes. So the book is called Staying Solo, Your Guide to Building a Simple and Sustainable Service Business. And it's really meant for solo service business owners who've started out and are realizing hey, you know what? I don't necessarily want to have an agency. I don't want to have a team, but really feeling that tension or that conflict because so much of the traditional entrepreneurial message is you need to scale, you need to be big, you need to have employees. And also there's this kind of weird thing that happens is people will say aren't you going to hire anyone? They kind of treat it like you have this cute little business, and you don't have a cute little business. You actually have a legitimate business. And I want people to think about their businesses hey, I can be a team of one, because that's what the majority of businesses are, especially in the US. It's 80% of businesses have one person in the business. So why do we think about it we need to have this brick and mortar? We need to Shark Tank style. So many people are doing services, they're staying home, they're cozy, they're happy, they're able to work a schedule and do things from a point of view that's really flexible. So why are we letting all this external noise get to us? So I really want to bring people back to the foundations and how do you build a business that's actually going to work for you and not get stuck in the hustle, not get stuck in the growth for the sake of growth as a ego thing or a vanity thing.
I love that so much because it's really about redefining success. When I left teaching, I was well, I need to replace my income, but really I think my biggest success is yes, I want to make money because that's what my business is for. Yes. But having that balance of if my parents need somebody to go with them to the doctor, I can go with them. If my sister needs childcare, I can take the day off and watch my niece. All of that flexibility. I like to think about my success in that way versus what you see on the internet, which is you need to make all of the money right now in 6 months.
Well, what the really interesting thing is, there was a study I found when I was researching the book, and it really tracks with the experiences I've had personally, as well as the people I work with, is it's a very small percentage of people that start a business with the motivation of making all the money. But the narrative, if you log into Instagram or TikTok, it's like 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures, you should make all the money. And like the majority of people do it for the reasons you said. They want flexibility. A lot of people, they're neurodivergent, they're disabled. There's family things, whether that be kids or aging parents or a loved one they need to care for. Like there's a lot of different factors that go into the choice or even being forced into having your own business. And I don't think we account for that nearly enough. Everyone's assuming that we're all showing up with the exact same level playing field. And it's like, we should all do it this way. And honestly, it's exhausting. And I think once people realize like, that's not what I want, and it's okay for me to say no to that, there's a lot of freedom that comes from that.
I love that. So you talk about creating boring businesses. What does that mean?
No, it kind of goes into the hype around entrepreneurship, especially if you're in the online world. Like everything is like, you need a course, you need this, you need that. And it's always about adding more layers, more revenue streams, more complication. And the reality is, I am just coming up to my 20th year of being self-employed. And I see this across all my clients is being willing to do the really boring, repetitive things like following up and asking for referrals. It's not about having to do this big song and dance. It's the really core foundational things that are not exciting that makes your business really stable and allows you to do what you want to do with it. Because we don't talk enough about the risk that goes with hiring. You've now got to meet payroll. We don't talk about, investing in things. There's risk involved in all of that. And we talk so much disproportionately about the reward of it, but no one talks about the risk and how a lot of us, we're not built for that risk. We want something that is nice and boring. Like we can show up, we can do our work. There's no drama. We shut the laptop and we carry on. And that is okay. That is why so many people left corporate, because they didn't want it to be all encompassing. Like you are a teacher, Stacy. That is not just a 9-to-5 job. I have lots of friends who are a teacher, like nights, weekends, like, you're grading, you're doing all these things. There's constantly things going on. And to be able to build a boring business where you get to choose and not have to show up in the classroom every day, that's a really compelling thing to be able to do.
Oh my gosh. I just told somebody this week, I was like, I have an alarm that goes off, but usually I wake up before it. But it's like, I'm not like waking up at 6 a.m. and being like, oh, I'm so exhausted this week. Like there's so much to do. And, there were times where I was teaching where I was getting calls from my principal at like 9 p.m. Like it's really such a different life that I have now. And it's only been a few years. It's cool to have like that contrast and just be able to build something that's like actually sustainable.
That you brought that up because one of my closest friends teaches 3rd grade. And we were on a girls' weekend not that long ago, and we're driving home on Sunday, and she opens her email, and she's like, here's the email. Her principal sends out an email every Sunday at 3:00. And she's like, and it ruins my Sunday every week.
And it's really hard to not check your email.
Exactly. Because she's like, I want to stay on communication with parents and, other staff members. She job shares, so there's always communication there. And I was like, yeah, no, you don't get paid enough to read that email on Sunday. You don't.
No, but there's no time on all the other times. So it's like you have to. We need good teachers. And if you have it in you to teach, please do it. But I'm also team leave teaching if you need to.
Yeah. I have like literally probably 7 teacher friends. And I'm just like, not for me. And I could see why you might want to get out of there.
It was like a good first decade of my career,
Yeah.
Now on to the next one. So tell me, what is some really bad advice that you hear online for solo business owners? I know that like you could write a whole book on it.
I talk a lot about the bad advice and kind of the setup of the book. And I think the interesting thing is sometimes it's not actually bad advice, but the advice isn't meant for us. That is the thing that if you were a solo service business owner, you're someone who's doing copywriting or design or consulting or even coaching, you are building a business that's about building one-to-one. And so much of the advice is designed for a different type of business where you're scaling like with a course or some, membership or something else. And it's not that those things are bad, but they're teaching you tactics for that one-to-many business, when what you really need is to work on very foundational things. How do I maintain my relationships? How do I get more referrals? How do I network so I get recommendations? And the one thing I see a lot of that's always really interesting to me when I work with people who work with corporate clients, that kind of intensifies. It gets even worse because they're trying to do like an email newsletter. Again, works great for certain things, but I'm sorry, that VP of product management that you're targeting, they don't have time for your newsletter. They're not looking for you. So, how are we meeting people where they actually are and actually doing the tactics that work for our people versus what the external noise is telling us to be doing?
And sometimes, as you're talking, I'm thinking it's like, sometimes it's like really going back to like, what's the most obvious thing? Because I was talking to a client last week and they're like, oh, well, I want to sign like 10 clients before this amount of time. And I'm like, okay, like, who are you going to start with? Like, what's the most obvious conversation that you can have? And just like go out there and be like, hey, I have spots open. Like, do you know anybody or do you need something? And like, you don't need to like jump to building another funnel or like another freebie. It's like literally just go talk to people. And sometimes it's so obvious you don't see it.
And that's just it. Like, that's a great example of a place like it can be so much simpler than we let it be. But because we kind of swim in these waters of questionable business practices and then business advice that doesn't work for us, we get all turned around. And what my real goal is with my work and my book is to get people just kind of oriented in the right way to know like, hey, you don't have to do that. It's okay. Because I have answered 2 questions for years with the solo service business owners I work with. Number one is it okay that I don't want this? Like, they need permission. And I'm like, most people don't want this. That's okay. Like, they're like, I don't really want a team. I don't want to do X, Y, or Z. I still want to do services. And I'm like, that's totally legitimate. And the other question I get is, what am I missing? And I'm like, you're not missing anything. This is it. You're in the sweet spot. It is supposed to be boring. Go get a hobby.
Go do something else that's not your business.
Literally, I'm just like, stop looking for problems that don't exist. Please go get a hobby. My clients, I'm like, guess what I'm going to prescribe for you today? A walk.
What is one thing a solo business owner can do to make their life easier?
Okay, I love this question. And this is going to seem like the simplest thing, but is often the most complicated thing, is to get your money handled. I feel like people are in 2 camps. I don't want to look at my numbers ever, or I look at my numbers every single day. And sometimes we're looking at the wrong numbers. And really, when you think about what is the purpose of my business? Yes, is to have the freedom and flexibility. But at the end of the day, we all need to get paid. We all have financial needs. Everyone needs to be drawing a salary from the business. So how am I ensuring that I am doing the activities to make the money I need to make in the business? And that number is going to be very personal. And I talk about like, how do we back into that, like with a reverse salary goal? Like, so many people are like, oh, I want to make $5,000 a month, but how much of that $5,000 a month are you going to bring home? And how many clients do you need? What are your taxes? What are your expenses? And the thing I see a lot of is people are really over investing in the business and then not paying themselves. And that's not sustainable. That's when your partner or your accountant comes to you and they're like, is this actually a business? Because you're not actually making money. And I am on a mission to make sure people are actually getting paid. And I don't care how much you want to pay yourself. I just want to make sure that whatever it is you need, that you're getting that from the business and you're not investing in all this extra stuff or, using really expensive tools if that's not what the budget dictates. Or if you want to use those things, how are you pricing things? How are you bringing in more clients? How are you doing the things to set yourself up for success? Because so many times it's like, oh, I have 3 clients, that's good. And then I have these expenses and I'll take the leftovers. I don't want anyone to just settle for the leftovers because we can do so much better than that.
I think that's great advice. I actually hired a bookkeeper last year and I ended up cutting a ton of things out of my business after hiring her. And I'm like, this is the one investment like I need to keep because I've said this in other episodes, but it's like now I'm able to make decisions so much more intentionally because I know where my money is going. It just helps make everything so much simple. Like if you're working backwards, and I'm going to plug you right now because you have the pricing calculator, which I've played with and it's really fun, but you can put in like how much money you want to make and it helps you work backwards because there's just so many expenses that you don't realize until you start looking at your numbers and you're like, oh, I'm paying this yearly subscription. I'm paying these monthly subscriptions. I'm paying for coaching. Like there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, like, how can you, maybe you're on a tier of something that's too high. Like, let's say like you do time tracking. How do you go to a smaller one? How do you use an alternative tool? It's really easy to get sucked into kind of the hyped up tools everyone's talking about, but is that the tool you actually need? And something I see a lot of, like right now, people are switching scheduling tools. People are switching away from Zoom, going to Google Meets or something else. Like there is always alternatives. And when you think you're like, oh, it's only $10 a month, but $10 a month over 12 months over how many years? Wouldn't you rather have that money in your pocket or use it on something else?
That's really like the long-term thinking that I think that can be really hard when you're starting your business because you're so like in the moment that it's hard to be like, well, what do I actually want this to be in 5 years?
Yeah. And I feel like one of the things, and I know I did this at different times, is you feel like if you buy the thing, it's like they're going to smooth the path to the results when no tool, no coach, no thing is actually going to do the work for you. Yes, it can help. It can be a kind of tool to enable you or help you figure things out. But at the end of the day, like you got to really weigh out, like, am I going to get the ROI on that expense? And I don't feel like we have enough discernment in the way our consumer culture is, let alone in the online business world, which is all about like, you should just invest. If you believed in yourself, you invest. And it's like, that's not how it works. So the same way, like if you're going to get a new roof on your house and you're going to go get like quotes from 3 roofing companies and you're going to budget for it, how do you bring that kind of rigor to your business so that you are not playing around with your money?
Yeah. What are like, besides the one thing that solo service providers should know, what's one thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about like the longevity of business? Because I often don't get to talk to people who have been in business for this long.
Yeah. So this is a really good question. And so around staying solo, I've created this framework with 6 pillars, and salary that we just talked about is one of them. But one of the other ones is space. And space, just think of it as capacity. But when we talk about capacity, we talk about it in like, I have 5 clients, I have this many hours. We talk about it from a time point of view. But we have to recognize as humans, we all bring different things to this business. We all have different levels of capacity. So we have to just like, yes, there might be like, hey, I'm Stacy. I have 20 hours a week because I have other commitments that I actually can do client work. But also, what is your energetic capacity? That is very different for a lot of people. What is your emotional capacity? I know when I've been going through some really big life events, I've had to adjust my business around me because I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to show up the way I normally would. Also, I'm neurodivergent. A lot of my clients are. What is your sensory capacity? Like, if I have too many calls in a day, my entire nervous system is jacked. So I have to manage that as part of my scheduling. It's not just the time. It's like, how do I manage all of that? And recognizing that for each of us, that is going to be very different. And if you want to have a business that lasts and endures, you need to recognize there's going to be different seasons in your business and that you are showing up the best you can, and you've got to respect your capacity and plan accordingly. And the thing I see so many solo service business owners do is they do not leave any margin. And I don't just mean for sickness or something that pops up. I mean, you wake up that day and you're like, I'm not feeling so people-y today.
Story of my life.
Exactly, right? Like I am like I'm cosplaying an extrovert right now, but I'm very introverted. I have ADHD, I have anxiety. And so those are things for me I have to account for in my business and in my business planning, because the reality is I'm not a renewable resource. So for my business to be sustainable, I have to continually be checking in on these things. And I feel like so many times the narrative for people is I should be able to do more, when the reality is should does not exist. You need to look at what you are working with and build from there and manage that very carefully and very, very intentionally.
Oh, it's so hard when you are an overachiever / people pleaser, though.
Yeah. And that is why, Stacy, there's an entire chapter on boundaries, because most people who start service businesses really like the service part of it. And what happens is boundaries get really shaky for a lot of people. And it's really hard to care for yourself, to care for your clients, to show up and do the things you need to do if your boundaries are completely non-existent or pretty shaky.
It's so funny that you're bringing this up because I actually met a client in person this week, which was super exciting because I mostly work online and I was so excited, but the day after, couldn't do anything. I was like, I need to write website copy, but I was like, my brain's not working. I really just need to like veg out on the couch and watch TV. So yeah, I guess that's the nice thing about entrepreneurship is you can kind of be flexible about it and actually listen to your brain and your body.
And what's nice is the longer you do this, you get better at knowing that stuff. Like I know, hey, I spent 3 days on site with a client. So that means now I need to not talk to anyone for 4 days. I mean, that sounds dramatic, but
no, it sounds very realistic, actually. Okay. Is there any other pieces of advice or like big ideas in the book that we didn't talk about that you want to highlight?
I think one of the things everyone should think about in the context of their business is not only what I kind of touched on earlier, like what season am I in? And I talk about this from the perspective, am I in a season of slow, like I'm just kind of coasting? Am I a season of sustaining what I've already built? Or am I a season of striving? Because that's going to change over time. You cannot be striving every year, all year. It just doesn't work that way. But the other thing we really have to look at is what is enough look like for me in terms of the money, the clients, the amount of work, because it is really easy. And listen, I understand it is expensive to buy things. It is expensive to live in this world right now. So we all need to make money, but not getting tethered into this idea that I need my business to be a 7-figure business for me to be successful. Success needs to be you deciding what enough looks like and going from there, because otherwise you will end up on that hamster wheel of just like the next accomplishment, the next accomplishment, the next accomplishment. And it's going to actually end up being pretty empty in the end of the day, because you're going to be like, well, why did I do all that? What was that for? I haven't done all these other things in my actual life I want to do. So I think there's finding I don't want to say a balance because that's a bit of a cliche, but like a little bit of a rhythm to, hey, in this season, I've made a deliberate choice. I just want things to be very, very, very slow, and that's okay.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Like you really have to like lean into the seasons. Like I know I work more in the winter because it's freezing outside and I don't want to go out there. And then in the summer, like I try to spend more time with my family and like cut out early, but then also just working all the time. It's just a recipe for burnout.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing there is an entire chapter on seasons because I talk about planning from a seasonal perspective, because one of the things I recognize is I have more time to work in the winter, but I also have seasonal depression because I live in Canada and hello, there's no vitamin D coming to me. I'm living to every Canadian cliche, but I also have to adjust my expectations about what I can actually do in that season and plan accordingly.
I love that. Such great advice and realistic advice that you can actually do no matter what your life looks like.
Like I want it to be doable for people, not like, oh my gosh, I have to do all the things and reboot my business. Because if you have you're beyond proof of concept in your business, you're like a year in, you've got clients, you're doing the thing. Okay, great. How can you just layer small things or make small incremental changes over time versus constantly being like, I have to level up? Because honestly, that next level up may not be what you want.
Oh, yes. I talk about tweaking a lot. So it's like you're never starting from scratch. You're just tweaking what you did last time. And I don't know if it's like my teacher brain, because like that's what I would do. I would look at last year's lesson plan and then do the same thing, but tweak it for the people in front of me. And I'm like, oh, it's just the same thing that you do in marketing.
That's just it. Like if something is working, let it work and just refine it and make it better versus going for the kind of the novelty and shiny object of like, I should try this brand new thing. Why are you making it so hard for yourself?
Make it easier, make it boring. Yes. All right. Where can people find you and your book and all of the things you have to offer?
So the best place to find me is on my website, bsfreebusiness.com. The book you can find at staying-solo-book.com. And you mentioned the calculator kit, which has a capacity tracker, a pricing calculator, and it also has the reverse salary calculator, and that's at bsfreebusiness.com/kit. And I hang out mainly on Threads these days at BS Free Business.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming out. If you haven't ordered Maggie's book yet, go ahead and order it now. And until next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Copy Classroom Audio Summit. Are you overwhelmed by copywriting for your business? The Copy Classroom can help you build copy confidence and skills so you can write copy that converts. Head over to stacybragacopy.com/copyclassroom to learn more and join our learning community.